Okay, dear friends, it is our 11th class. In the previous class, we spoke about the law. Now, something connected with the law that is called obligation and sanction. Why we speak about obligation and sanction? If there is a law and we said on the part of the legislature, three things are the must for a law to be a powerful, genuine law. That means the knowledge and the will to establish obedience from others and the manifestation of the will. And the will to establish obedience from others and the manifestation of the will. These things are called the concept of obligation and sanctions. The law in itself places an obligation upon the will to follow a course of a particular kind of action prescribed by the law. If there is a law, then there is an obligation for the part of the subject to obey that law. That's the thing. That is called obligation. And a sanction means the reward or punishment attached with a law by the legislative body. Those who obey the law will be rewarded, and those who are going against the law, they will be punished. Such things are called sanctions. So they are attached with a law. So when there is a law, the legislature should have the will to impose that law, and the legislature should have the manifestation of that will. That is why we are speaking about this concept of obligation and sanction. So a moral obligation can be defined like this. It is a necessity based on intelligent motivation of obeying the prescriptions of a law. First of all, it is a necessity. That means if there is a law, that law is always demand. The laws will be always demanding the obligation from the part of the individual. So it is a necessity based on intelligent motivation. That term is very important. A necessity based on intelligent motivation of obeying the prescriptions of the law. That is called a moral obligation. And when we speak about the moral obligation, from where this power of obligation is coming? When there is a law, from where this law is getting that power to ask for the obligation or obedience? From where this power is coming? Only when we are sure enough that this power, how it is being attached with the law, then it will be easy to understand it and also easy to follow it. And there are so many theories regarding the origin of the obligations of a law. There are so many theories. Not every people believing in one particular theory, but there are so many theories are there. And first of all, let us look at the Christian way of understanding from where this obligation is actually deriving. And we call this theory the theistic origin of obligation. Not only the Christians, all the religions are proposing the theistic origin of obligation. And many of the countries, especially the Western countries, they are also believing in this, the theistic origin of obligation. That means the obligation of the law, that power the law is requiring, or the law is having that power, it is from the lawmaker, and the ultimate lawmaker is God. So it is from God this power is coming. The supreme good can only give us or give this power to the law, so that when there is a law or where there is a law, that the obligation is already attached with the law. For example, we have obedience to so many people. And when our country is making a law and promulgating a law, all the citizens of India should follow that law. So, what is our obligation towards this law? Actually speaking, there is only one authority, the super authority, that is God, and all power is vested on God. And all the human people, those who are in authority, they are representing God's power. All the people in the world who is having authority, they are representing God. So since we are obeying any of these human persons in authority, actually we are obeying God Himself. Then only we can find the meaning in religious obedience or obedience to somebody else. Otherwise, we are all slaves. Because in two ways we can obey a person. First way, it is out of respect and out of honor. We can obey a person. The second one, out of fear of punishment. And if I am obeying because of the fear of punishment, in the language of Immanuel Kant, I am a slave. A slave is not having any freedom at all. Therefore, there cannot be any morality being attached in my life because I am not responsible, because I am a slave. Out of fear, I am doing it. And we know fear is a moral impediment. We studied already. Therefore, when I obey a law, I believe that this law has its ultimate origin in the lawmaker, that is God. And all the human people in authority are representing God. Therefore, I obey this law and that particular authority. So it is not a physical power. If it is a physical power, I am obeying it because of fear. But it is more than a physical power. That is why we said it is an intelligent motivation that enables me to oblige. And this is more than what is in my life. Even my life, I compare with this moral obligation and duties. This moral obligation and duties may go beyond even my life. That is why certain times, for the sake of duty, people are ready to sacrifice their lives. They know it is dangerous to their life. Even then, for the sake of duty, they believe that they have a moral obligation to go for it. The fire brigades, people, where there is fire, they will come, and they know fighting with the fire, it is a dangerous thing. And many people used to die, or the soldiers in the battlefield, they know it is very dangerous thing. Or the police officers, they know it is very dangerous thing to deal with other people. But even then, for the sake of duty, they go for, and even they are ready to sacrifice their life, meaning this obligation is an intelligent motivation, basing on an intelligent motivation, and in the face of this moral obligation and moral duty, I am even ready to sacrifice my life. So it is having a higher understanding, and only with this theistic origin of obligation we can understand and we can explain then this meaning of why a person is ready to even sacrifice his life or her life. The corona times, think about our medical practitioners and the medical field, the health workers, how they engage in this mission. They know that they will get this disease. Even then, they are ready to sacrifice their lives and their families and coming and helping other people because they believe that it is their moral obligation, moral duty to go with it. The second theory, obligation and sanctions, we can have the rationalist theory of obligation. And we know the rationalist Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is not ready to accept the divine, the theistic origin of obligation. And it is totally against his theory of ethics, that is the categorical imperatives. The historical session, you have the note about the Kantian morality, and there you can read and you can understand what is this theory of categorical imperatives. And Kant says, If a person obeying somebody outside of himself is a slave, and he is obeying for the sake of some kind of reward, if it is for a reward for the future or anything looking at to achieve something, then that cannot come under the categorical imperatives. On the other hand, it will be under the title hypothetical imperatives. What do you mean by, what is the difference between a categorical imperative and a hypothetical imperative? A hypothetical imperative is always having this structure, if and then. If you want to pass the exam, then study well. Is an example, easy example for a hypothetical imperative. Meaning, if only you want to pass the exam, you study. If you don't want to pass the exam, you need not study. This can be applicable in our day-to-day life, but only in moral matters, we cannot use this hypothetical imperative. Because morality always go with categorical imperative. That means whatever be your case, be good. Good must be done and evil must be avoided. It is not if you want to have this, good must be done. No. In whatever situation you are, what kind of people you are, no matter, you must lead a good life. That is an imperative. Therefore, Kant says a hypothetical imperative cannot be used in moral matters and ethics. And therefore, if your obligation and sanctions are related to a higher authority or any authority outside of yourself, that means you are just like a slave, and in order to please that authority, you are doing something. Therefore, there is no meaning in that, and there is no moral obligation, there is no moral character in you, because you are a slave. Either you are a slave to God. You do good in order to please God. You do good in order to achieve an afterlife. Such things can't deny. No. Then there is no moral responsibility, because you are always having this hypothetical nature. If anybody don't want to please God or the afterlife, then they can lead any kind of life in this world. Kant says no. And it will destroy the society, and it is something inhuman. Therefore, if there is a rule, moral rule, that should come out of the person himself. That's why he said the moral autonomy of a person. The moral autonomy of a person means I should be my own legislature, I should be my own executive, and I should be my own judiciary. I make my own laws, and I promulgate it by myself, and I obey it. And if I am not going with this, then I feel that I am going astray, I am going against my own commandments. So Kant, therefore, proposing this categorical imperative and the different ways of making it the principles, and it is already in your note. So therefore, Kant denies the theistic obligation, because if you believe that God is the source of all the obligation, then you are slave to God. Therefore, it cannot be a moral thing in your personal life. Therefore, be your own judge. Be your own lawmaker. The moral autonomy, and you make laws for yourself. But there is a problem there. First of all, then, we cannot accept any of the laws and regulations of the society, because nobody is empowering a social body, maybe a state or maybe in an institution. Nobody is empowering a state or institution to promulgate laws, because they are not empowered, and I am not bound to obey them. If I obey them, then I am a slave to them. Therefore, no. So, in this way, Kant's moral principles, the obligation and sanctions level, we cannot accept it. We cannot accept it. So this is about Immanuel Kant, the rationalistic origin of the obligation. And we have another theory that is called the empiricist and obligation. The empiricism we know, they speak about the material world and all what we have through the experiences, and they deny the world outside, because above the material world there is nothing according to them. And there then the whole concept of God is denied then, because God is not a material being, God is an immaterial being, a spiritual reality. So all what is spiritual they deny, because they believe only in the material application, and experience is the source of knowledge, empiricism. And therefore all the laws and regulations according to them are coming from two factors. Especially we take this from Spencer. Because of two factors, people are making their obligation and accepting the sanctions. One is external factors and the other one is internal factor. The external factor, the origin of the duty and obligation, because of certain religious or political or social restraint from the society in which we are living. And there, each and every society is having their own rules and regulations. They were emerged through a social process. And when the society emerged itself, all the laws and regulations are not intact like that, but according to the needs of the society, the laws will be emerged, and we have the codification of the law and other things. So it is only an evolutionary process. An external factor is there. The society in which we live, the society is always telling us, go with the norms and regulations of the society, the customs and practices of the society. So when I disobey the society and its customs and practices, then I will be punished. I have to suffer. So if I want to be in that particular society, I have to obey. That is the external factors. And the internal factors, that means the consequence of my actions in the society, I have to suffer. If I go with the society, then I can be happy. If I go away from the society, then I have to suffer. So internally then I am conditioned. So therefore I will be obeying the society because it is always good for me. Here, many of the things in our day-to-day life, it is okay, but in moral field, we cannot fully apply these principles, because if the society or this natural process is the only thing that is making the laws and regulations, then there will not be any consistency in the laws and regulations, because one society and the other society and many of the society, they have their own practices and customs and traditions. We cannot have a certain basic values. If there are certain basic values and that is present in all the societies, there must be a common origin. There must be a common origin. And that is lacking in these theories. So empiricist, the origin of sanctions and obligations, we cannot accept it fully. These are the theories speaking about from where the laws and regulations, the precepts are getting its power, demanding the obligation and from our part and installing obligations and sanctions upon us. So we, the Christian way of thinking, and basing on St. Thomas Aquinas, we believe that it is the theistic theory that can give us a better understanding and a better answer. So let us go a little bit deeper into the concept of the obligation. Obligation is the moral necessity to do the good and avoid the evil based on the knowledge that God, our supreme good, demands the observance of the law and forbids its violation. So this can be the definition then we can say. The Christian understanding, an obligation means it is a moral necessity to do good and avoid evil based on the knowledge that God, our supreme good, demands the observances of the law and forbids its violation. So since God is there and He is the source of all the laws and precepts, He wants us our observances, and therefore we believe that this is something connected with the theistic understanding. Now, Coming to sanctions, as I said in the beginning, sanctions means the reward and punishments ordained by a legislature for the observance or transgression of the law. A sanction can be a reward or punishment that is attached with a law by the law-giving body for our observances of the law. And those who observe will be rewarded, and those who are going against it will be punished. And these sanctions are the effective motives. These sanctions are the effective motives that enables a person to go with the law. If there are no sanctions, no rewards and punishments, then people will not be following it because they are very weak in their nature. And again we go back the concept of law we said from the part of the legislature. A law must be a powerful law. There must be three things: the knowledge and the will to make obligation and the manifestation of the will. And these rewards and punishment are the manifestation of that will. That means if anybody is obeying a law, they will be rewarded. Anybody is not obeying the law, they will be punished. The traffic rules. And we know every corner and every junction there are traffic polices waiting for the people, waiting for the vehicles. And if somebody is driving with speed that is above the limit of speed, they will be stopped and they will be asked to pay the penance. And if the things are repeating and repeating, then their license will be cancelled, so that people will be afraid there, and people will not go out of this rule because they believe that if only I obey, then only I can be safe. So sanctions are the effective motives. A sanction is, and now a sanction we can say can be either inadequate or adequate. So there are two types of sanctions, that means reward and punishment. Either they can be inadequate or adequate. Inadequate means these sanctions may not make a person to obey the law always. Then we can say it is only an inadequate sanction. Once I pay the penalty for my driving, that never guarantee that hereafter I will never violate that rule. Because this penalty, previous it was only 100 rupees and people have enough money. So in any need, they take the speed and go, and whenever police is coming, 100 rupees, okay. And they believe that paying the money but saving the time, and the time is more important. Now that amount is increased, now people are afraid because it is not something they can now comfortably give. So a sanction, as I said, the traffic rules, it is an inadequate sanction. Or maybe a person may be arrested for some crimes, and the judge will give a sanction, penalty, that imprisonment, maybe 3 months, maybe 3 years, maybe 6 years, maybe life imprisonment. Such things are called inadequate. That never guarantee that that person coming out of the jail will never repeat the same crime. But we know the people are just, they carry on. So they never mind this kind of sanctions. So such sanctions are called inadequate sanction, not adequate enough to prevent. But certain sanctions are called adequate. If that sanction is there, then we have the guarantee that that person will never violate any other rules. And the capital punishment, at least for the sake of that person, it is an adequate sanction. But it is not an adequate sanction in its full sense by seeing that one person was undergone capital punishment, all the people then stop doing such things. No, actually the purpose of that sanction is that when a person is being hanged for his crime, then the society should aware that if I do those things, I will also get the same punishment. Therefore, I should refrain from it. But we know that People are not worried about that, and they commit the same thing and they go on, because any of the sanctions in this world are not adequate enough. They are all inadequate by one sense or the other. They are not adequate enough to stop the violations, or they are not adequate enough to make the people always obey the law. All such sanctions, that means rewards and punishment, are inadequate. But if a sanction is adequate enough to prevent all the violations and make everybody doing the proper way of action regarding laws, then we can say it is an adequate sanction. And why we need of sanctions is another question. Is it needed? Sanctions, reward and punishments attached with the law. It is because of the weakness of human person. Many people, if there is no force from the authority, they will not follow the rules and regulations. And there will be laxity in following the laws and regulations. In our day-to-day life, we know that if only there is strict police patrol and strict observances, people are ready. Wearing mask. When you are going out, if there is nobody to control and check, then nobody will wear. Only those people will be penalized. The health workers and police, they are all patrolling. And we are ready, and we know that if I go without a mask, I have to give penalty and punishment. Therefore, I do it. So there will be always that knowledge or that understanding that I have to obey it. It is my moral duty. That is lacking in many people, but some people is always going with that. But in many people's life, maybe because of lack of education or lack of information or whatever the case, they may not go with the law and its sanctions. Therefore, sanctions are a must. Sanctions are a must. The good must be rewarded and the evil must be punished. And now, when we speak about sanctions in its totality, there are imperfect temporal sanctions and perfect eternal sanction. We said the sanctions can be adequate or inadequate. And when we speak about this, another division is imperfect temporal sanctions and perfect eternal sanctions. What's the meaning? All the worldly sanctions, all the sanctions that is attached in the positive laws. Positive laws means man-made laws. All the sanctions attached with the positive laws are imperfect and temporal in its nature. It is imperfect because it will not give us the true guarantee that the people will always obey it. No. There will be people disobeying it. If that is the case, then it is an imperfect sanction. And it is also temporal. That means its duration is limited. Only when this particular law is existing, there only this sanction we can use. Otherwise, no need of that sanction. Therefore, all the earthly things, all the earthly laws, that means all the positive laws are attached with imperfect temporal sanctions. But there are perfect eternal sanctions. That means nothing is lacking in that sanction. It is perfect in itself. That means it gives us the guarantee that people will be obeying 100%. And it is forever. This sanction is forever. And according to St. Thomas Aquinas, the final judgment a person will have after death, only that is called a perfect eternal sanction. All the other sanctions are temporal. So when we realize this, that God is our supreme good and His will must be done, and those who are following His will in this world will be rewarded properly, and those who are going against His will be punished properly. So the final thing will be a perfect eternal sanction. So let us see the status of the just. That means a person ready to follow the will of God, the laws that is emerged from the will of God. What will be his condition? And there is no question at all. He will be rewarded with the final good. That is the beatific vision. That means he will be united with God. And he will be in paradise, as Jesus said. So that will be the finality of a person following the will of God in his life upon the earth. But some people may not be that much perfect. Then what will happen? So that's a question. The status of the wicked after death, what will be their condition? The wicked after death. And St. Thomas says there are 4 possibilities. There are 4 possibilities for a wicked person. And we should know this, and we have to teach others. We have to tell them, don't look for any possibilities, but if there is anything, a surety, go for that. And the surety is this: follow the laws, you will be there. And if you are not following the law, then you are under these 4 possibilities. Let us examine all these 4 possibilities. The first, they might obtain immediate eternal beatitude. Since God's nature is this, He showers rain and the sun upon the wicked and the just, and it is His will that nobody should be perished. Therefore, even if you are a wicked person, you may be rewarded with eternal bliss. That is one of the possibilities, not a surety. It is one of the possibilities. An ever-loving God, a forgiving God, as Jesus taught us, He is a loving Father. He never likes the destruction of any of His sons and daughters. Therefore, even if we are wicked, He may forgive us unconditionally and grant us eternal happiness. Again I say, it is only one of the possibilities. We are not sure whether it will happen or not. Finally, it is depending upon God, the perfect judge. That is why I said it is coming under one of the possibilities for the wicked. All their sins may be forgiven and they may take into eternal heaven. Just like the good thief by the side of the cross of Jesus. Jesus promised him, today you will be with me in paradise. That invitation may be there for everybody. Maybe. Not a guarantee. Second possibility, they might be punished temporarily and then obtain beatitude. That means the possibility of purgatory. The possibility of purgatory that is proposing Catholic Church. Nothing unholy can touch the holiness of God. You know the example of Moses and the burning bush. Moses, keep your slippers away, it's a holy place. Nothing unholy can reach the holiness of God. Therefore, if there is any unholiness or corruption in our life, we may be temporarily purified and punished. Instead of punishment, we can say we will be purified temporarily and then we will be rewarded with beatitude, salvation. That is the purgatory. Purgatory is not an eternal thing. Persons will be going through that. Then when they are purified enough, their souls will be lifted up to heaven. That's the second possibility. Again, it is one of the possibilities. Third, they might be annihilated. They might be annihilated. That means destroyed forever. But it is something against the metaphysical principle. A spiritual being cannot be destroyed or annihilated. Physical body, yes. but spiritual body. Our soul is a spiritual body. But God can. So, the moment you are judged, you will be over. Nothing remaining. Complete annihilation. Well and good. Because there is no suffering at all. Over. So that is the third possibility. But there is a fourth possibility. That's a terrible thing. The existence of hell. They might be condemned to eternal misery. They will be condemned to eternal misery. This is the most dangerous thing. And that remains as one of the possibilities. And many people believe that that is the only possibility. So, a person can be forgiven and taken to heaven, or temporal punishment, purification, then to heaven, or complete annihilation, or condemned eternally, eternal torments, tormented eternally, no end at all, suffering, nothing else. Therefore, dear friends, this is what is concerned with the will of God, our human action. So, when we study this theistic understanding, there is always that reward is projected in front of us. The eternal happiness, the complete happiness, the beatific vision. And whatever we do in this world is always helping us climbing on the ladder to attain that. There may be so many obstacles there, so many difficulties there. Therefore, as a guideline in our life, God has given us the laws. And when we follow these laws, ultimately the divine law, natural law and positive laws, then the reward is already there. If we are failing to follow these laws and the will of God, then these possibilities are there. Therefore, avoid these possibilities and go for what is 100% sure in our life. Be good always. Good must be done and evil must be avoided. Thank you.